This is Studio 809 Podcasts, informing, connecting, and empowering the residents of the Pikes Peak region.
We're coming to you from Studio 809, Community Podcast Studio at the Next Us, a professional cooperative environment for small businesses in downtown Colorado Springs. Welcome to Peak Environment, the Pikes Peak region's podcast about environmental integrity and stewardship. I'm your host today, Ally Richardson with Pikes Peak Permaculture. Pikes Peak Permaculture is a 501c3 nonprofit serving the southern Colorado region in the nature and ways of permaculture. Permaculture, we feel, is a design that benefits the community, enhancing one's ability to connect with the earth, to regenerate land and waters, to grow food, and to care for the future. Today with me, I have guest Richard Skorman, and I would like for you to kind of give us an introduction of yourself, Richard, and why you're dressed as an elf today.
Yeah, so I have an important job. I do 10 days before Christmas in front of our businesses. I plug meters, and I knock on people's windows and say, "You don't recognize me, but I'm the parking meter elf." and then I thank them for coming, and it's a great gift. It's a real gift to me, not to them, because I love it. I wish I could do it all the time.
It's a beautiful gesture.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
And Richard, I have you in here today to talk about some of your visions that you had for the Colorado Springs area. And given your expertise, you used to sit on Colorado Springs City Council.
That's right. Yeah, believe it or not, I got elected 4 times, and I left my last term very early because of COVID and had to be back in our businesses again because I'm the restaurant person in our businesses, and my wife Patricia does the retail, and the restaurants were really struggling with COVID.
And for those who are listening, Richard owns Poor Richards?
Yes, I own Poor Richards, that's right.
And the corresponding stores?
Yeah, and so lots of years in local politics, and was one of the founders of the TOPS initiative. I started the U.S. Environmental Film Festival. I was on city council for a long time, vice mayor for a little while, and but really involved in Fountain Creek. So my whole passion began my first week on city council with the floods in 1999, when it rained for 24 hours. It rained like 5 inches, and the whole sewer system backed up. Tens of millions of gallons of raw sewage went into Fountain Creek. Wow. 2 weeks later, I was down in La Junta with 200 screaming ranchers saying, "What is all this toilet paper and poop doing in our fields?" And
sure. So
ever since then, I got really involved in trying to clean up Fountain Creek.
So you started off with a major project.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, I overheard you talking about a new initiative that you wanted to bring forward to Colorado Springs area, and I brought you in here today because I think it's just really wonderful what you are doing. We need, and I know this from following what Fountain Creek Watershed and the creek cleanup, what has been happening, but they are wanting more effort from the community, not just in Fountain Creek, but throughout the watershed. So
yeah, and so let me give you some background, because
sure.
I think I'm a nerd, and a lot of people may not understand what we have in Colorado Springs or in this region, but so Fountain Creek is the ultimate receptacle for everything that goes into our drains, everything that we pour on our lawns, all the water that we import, everything ends up in Fountain Creek. Fountain Creek goes into the Arkansas River down in northern Pueblo, city of Pueblo, and ends up in the Gulf of Mexico. But before then, it goes through 180 water treatment systems and probably tens of thousands of irrigation systems. Mm-hmm. And we are one of the primary users of Fountain Creek. In fact, it begins up in Woodland Park, so it's not far from home. So, and we happen to have a geography. You couldn't have scripted a worse place to have Fountain Creek be the receptacle of everything, because it was never meant to be all year round. It's very susceptible to erodible soil. Mm-hmm. Because its banks are made of sandstone, and there's pure shale, and there's Pikes Peak granite. All that ends up there. And then we ignore Fountain Creek and its 54 tributaries, and we turn our backs to them, and we let it get polluted. And so you think about the elevation drop, you think about all the impervious surfaces we have. We have many more than most places because we were built for cars and tourists. So, but look at the facts about this region. Colorado Springs is 500,000 people now. It's predicted to be 750,000 in 2050. The county, 1 million.
That's right.
We're the fastest growing county in the state. We are the fastest growing city in the state. And we're building everywhere. We're building impervious surfaces everywhere. So Fountain Creek has a real challenge, and so do its tributaries. But then when you talk about all of us ignoring that, turning our backs, it's a place for garbage, it's a place for the homeless. We are not doing a good job being stewards, by the way. You can go talk to professors and they say there's forever chemicals and there's, tons and tons of trash. So Creek Week was a great project of the Fountain Creek Watershed Flood Control and Greenway District, which I was a founder of, and is a reason that I got involved in all this. But once a year. So I decided to create Richard's Rubbish Roundup. And it's every Tuesday. It's 3 to 5 in the winter and 4 to 6 in the daylight savings time. And we meet at the Marion House Soup Kitchen's parking lot. And there's 15, maybe 20 of us every week. And we go down to Fountain Creek and we have garbage bags and we have pickers and we have gloves and we have containers for needles because you might find a few. And it's amazing how much garbage we get every week. 15, 20, 25 big bags full of garbage. And then we treat everybody to pizza and beer over at Poor Richard's. But it's my passion to see if we could really have Richard's Rubbish Roundup throughout the city in the 54 tributaries. And that would be my hope, is that we could get neighbors and neighborhood groups to really adopt where they live. And in the process, it's also my hope that we can turn those areas into areas that are natural, that attract wildlife, that attract bees and pollinators. Maybe they could have little trails going through them where people could recreate and have nice little natural areas where they live. Or maybe even someday those 54 tributaries to Fountain Creek could all connect with bicycle paths, bicycle trails, greenways, ways to get people out of traffic, maybe underneath the roads, which they certainly do now with the streams. And then you would finally have a way to get people out of their cars and get around the community, because Colorado Springs has people that love the outdoor life. 300 days of sunshine. We were the most fit city at one point. We were the city with the most millennials moving to it, the most dog friendly, the best city to mountain bike from. And you start going, down that list, and we're going to struggle to provide recreation for our citizens in the future, because city's park department's been underfunded for decades. It was when I left City Council, my first go-around in 2007, to work for Senator Salazar. I became his regional director. It was, $19 million budget. It went down to $3 million.
Wow.
And it was like almost a decade before it got back to where it was. Then you add that the county is where half of the growth is happening. So when I was on council just recently in the last couple of years, half of the residential permits were being issued in the county. So they don't require much that you don't have to set aside land or money for parks. You don't have to do stormwater infrastructure because it's all going to end up in Fountain Creek and the city will take care of it anyhow. The city has the stormwater enterprise. But the county is just less government. Let's not tell people what they have to do, what they have to build, where they have to build it, because we don't want to interfere with the marketplace. Well, they're draining the Denver aquifer dry. And that's something that isn't going to ever come back.
Yeah, I heard 50 years it could be dry in some places.
Yeah, and so and they don't have water. Colorado Springs doesn't want to annex any of the county because they haven't built it in the right way. They don't have stormwater. They don't have utility infrastructure. They don't have parks. They don't have roads. They don't have anything that the city would require, ADA requirements. So why would the city adopt them, 50 years from now when Falcon is 25,000 people? They're not going to. So they're going to run out of water. Mm-hmm. The city itself wastes water. And so this is where permaculture can really fit in.
I definitely think that we are wasting water in ways. We are in a desert climate. And we have 30 to 40% of our water being used for turf landscape.
That's right. Yep. And 65% of our water comes from the Colorado River.
That's right. Very, very far away. What is it, 187 miles?
Yes. And the Colorado River is over-appropriated, as you all know, or we all know, and it's decreasing. And we have good senior water rights. We'll have it for drinking, for commercial use. But the waste on landscapes, I don't think so. Mm. We're the only city in the Front Range that doesn't have a residential landscape ordinance. When I was on council in 2002, we tried to pass it. Didn't work. But what we have is an area that needs recreational opportunities. Our mountain backdrop parks are overcrowded. We attract 20 to 25 million tourists a year here as well.
That's great.
And everybody drives, and by the way, and they all idle, and they all a lot of them have pickup trucks or from Texas and Oklahoma. Yeah, I'm not blaming them. I love having them as customers in our business, but it just creates this situation that we need more opportunities. They close Cheyenne Canyon every Saturday in the summer. It's too crowded. Oh. You can't find a place to park in Stratton Open Space, Mount Cutler, all these places that you used to be able to hike. And so Garden of the Gods, 6 million visitors a year. Mm-hmm. So what if we connected all of our greenways and created all these trails and created recreation near where people lived? And what if people, neighborhood associations, homeowners associations, park friends groups, and other people adopted their wetland areas?
So like a residential ordinance?
Yeah. Well, a residential ordinance would be really valuable, residential landscaping ordinance, so people would plant native and adaptive plants that weren't so water wasting.
And I think that is, are you familiar with the turf replacement program that was passed last year? Mm-hmm. It was 22-1151, and that was basically encouraging our residents to plant natives. Actually, I think the wording was rip out your lawn, which I am totally against. I think we should smother it with cardboard and mulch, keep that biota in the soil. But if we start to do that, we'll get more percolation, or less stress on those stormwater systems in the neighborhoods, and hopefully no more chemicals. People are applying rocks that was pretty popular in the Springs for a while. I know in my neighborhood, that's how it is.
Yes.
And people spraying chemicals. Well, then water gets washed right off with the chemical, and it just ends up in our streams as well. So
no, exactly. And, well-intended, the rock landscapes, but also the rock landscapes create more heat.
Yep.
And so that's the other issue that people aren't thinking about here, but we are getting hotter. So when I was on council, there was a Colorado College class that spent the whole block studying our heat island effect here. Mm-hmm. We're 2.5 degrees hotter than other Front Range cities. We have a urban canopy deficit. There was a study done for that. Only 19% urban canopy, where other Front Range cities are 25 or 30%. And we're losing more trees. We have the emerald ash borer marching down from Douglas County, and lots of ash in neighborhoods. We have whole monocultures of ash trees in Rustic Hills and Village 7 and places like that. So we are now building power generation for air conditioners. So they're talking about 75% saturation of air conditioners in the Colorado Springs Utilities territory.
That's huge.
So, and they're not the right kind. They're not the expensive kind, the heat exchanger kind. They're the kind that just pours more heat out into the atmosphere. And we have parts of the city, like the southeast, where many low-income and minorities live, that's 6 to 8 degrees hotter than the rest of the city.
Yeah, I heard about that recently. And they're planning a project where they're going to be planting, is it 100,000 trees in the south side?
Yes.
And we found that interesting at Pikes Peak Permaculture because we are also trying to work in the south side to help educate people on designing for growing food sustainability. And one of the things that we noticed was there's not really very much talk about the aftermath of planting those trees. And I think that's going to be a really important thing for them is we're not going to be able to water all of those trees.
That's right.
We have to find other ways, and permaculture does that. It's amazing.
Yeah, and that's where I would hope that permaculture could really get involved in how we do a lot of these things. So if I can set up a nonprofit possibly to start picking up garbage in neighborhoods in these wetland areas, and maybe, lo and behold, we would bring in some permaculture people that would be able to help the neighbors put together, nice wetlands.
Yep, that's one of our ethics. People care, building community.
Yeah.
Yep, strengthening. And I like the idea that you mentioned of connecting the greenways. I think that's beautiful because one thing we build and we don't think about wildlife corridors. We just think of that wildlife urban interface. We're not thinking how to make that a nice system. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
That would be a great way to go forward. And who knows, maybe we could plant the right kinds of trees in the right places that can get some natural water that comes off of our rooftops and off of our parking lots and ends up into our 54 tributaries to Fountain Creek. But maybe beforehand they could, water cottonwoods or bigger trees, and maybe they could create more shade. And and then those of us who are passionate about climate change, we're not going to be able to plant our way out of climate change and carbon problems in our region because of the lack of water. Other places could reforest, and places back east, whatever, in the Midwest, but here maybe creating wetlands is what we can do to absorb more carbon.
That's right, greenhouse. Yep.
Yeah,
absorption.
because they're good. They're good carbon absorbers, and maybe we can create these green natural areas for people.
And I think the wetlands too help. And I'm going to look here for a second. There was a project in California called the Lewis Creek Restoration Project. Are you familiar with that?
No, I haven't heard that.
Just broke ground this month, and they're potentially going to be adding 3,000 acre feet a year into their aquifer by creating wetlands.
Oh, wow.
So if we're able to hold the water on the land, it can percolate versus just sending it downstream like a train, like a steam train.
And it's cleaner too.
That's right.
Wetlands really are the filter that you need to keep a place like Fountain Creek clean, and which ends up in 180 water treatment systems, and so we have that responsibility. But wouldn't it be great if we could become a city in the high desert of wetlands? Maybe even some of our big retention pond areas that we now require because of stormwater lawsuits. Maybe those could be wetlands too. Maybe they could be amenities for neighborhoods instead of just big vacant areas that people never use and turn their backs to.
That's right, and they can also become wonderful areas for wildlife habitat.
That's right.
Yep, and you were talking about planting the right vegetation. I think that, for instance, cattails is a powerhouse for cleaning up water. So if we could get, some of these retention ponds planted with those kind of things, that would offer cleaning of the water, but also opportunities for people to go and experience wild. People drive out to the mountains all the time because they want to be with nature, but why do we have to be against that? We can have it right here in our city,
No, and that's what we all love. The glue that holds us together in this region is the outdoor life.
Yes.
So, people can be conservative, they can disagree about some things or other things, but when it comes to wildlife or nature or open space or trails or parks, so when we passed the first TOPS initiative in 1997, we tried in 95 and it failed, but in 97 it was the first time that voters wanted to raise their taxes after Tabor. And we were very proud of that. And then we extended it, with a huge majority both times. And, this is what was popular. People were willing to tax themselves even in Colorado Springs for the outdoor life. And as much as people, may be conservative in some other ways, but, it's changing too. It's getting much more moderate and reasonable here.
We have no choice.
yeah, it's good. It's probably because of young people. That's the old white guys you got to get rid of out there. So.
Well, even us young people have to think about the future generations and think about what would be beneficial to, I guess, the native think 7 generations ahead. And in permaculture, that's what we're thinking, not just for us, not for our children, but for everyone else in the future.
Yeah.
And
No, you have to, and it's a scary prospect for people's kids and grandkids these days.
I think your project just sounds really amazing.
Yeah.
And I know I'll be a volunteer coming in to help you clean up, and even trying to look at my area. I'm over in the Cimarron Hills area on the east side of town, and I wish we had more parks and connection there, but also ways to travel. I'd like to ride my bike, but right now it's not, not connected on that side at all.
You can't if you take your life in your hands.
That's right.
Yeah,
it becomes
it's not
a
easy.
risk.
Yeah, it's a big risk. And we were well intended on council in the old days, and we put in place lots of bicycle lanes, and it's still great to have them in certain places, but other places not so much. We really didn't. We weren't thinking it through. To have a new bicycle lane that goes into 6 lanes of intense traffic and people rushing home at night. So we had other ways for people to bicycle and ways to connect them all. That would be really valuable.
Yeah, beautiful bike trails out here.
Oh yeah, really so
beautiful.
much. And then the other piece that nobody is really paying attention to as much as I would like to is our wildland-urban interface and our wildfire risk.
Yes.
So we have the largest wildland-urban interface in the country of any major city. Los Angeles is technically bigger, but ours is the most contiguous. And we have 125,000 people that live in it or work in it, and so it's not a unlikely situation that we would have another fire disaster like the Waldo fires, Black Forest fires, that could be even bigger. Major floods like what happened in Manitou, major floods into Fountain Creek because of huge new impervious surfaces areas. Evacuation planning is a huge nightmare that everybody worries about. You got whole neighborhoods like the Broadmoor that are using Lake Avenue with circles and Cresta and 2-lane roads with the zoo and everybody who may have to get out someday. And what if we thought about a lot of those western tributaries to Fountain Creek as places to create more wetlands? Wouldn't that also be a good place to create more fire breaks, more places to protect people?
Absolutely. And a lot of, I had noticed walking along the creek in the north, there's a lot of overgrowth and opportunities there to implement things like a biochar. Are you familiar with that? So biochar is a way to regenerate the soil but also create a way, instead of coming in to clear out vegetation as a lot of operations are currently doing. Instead, we come in and we leave things where they are and remediate that land. So I did hear from a firefighter friend that creek fires in the wintertime can be kind of challenging.
Yeah, I bet.
And then that gets, of course, into the waterways. Yeah,
I know it gets into the waterways. And so, what if we adopted in those ways too and really help the fire department, they and the Forest Service. And, it's a daunting task to think about how we can mitigate our, mountain backdrop of, where we have 1.1 million acres of national forest and wilderness right next to the city. So we're not going to go in and be able to mitigate every inch of it, but what if the areas near where people lived and where people recreated were adopted and taken care of more? And that would be my hope in all this too. So I'm a dreamer. And I think you might be too, because I know the permaculture people are, trying to get the word out in ways that maybe, other people haven't thought of before.
We need to work with nature, not against it. That's one of my favorite things that I say in permaculture. And along with the creek cleanup, there was one thing that I did want to ask about and how you felt, especially with some initiatives lately that are going to be cleaning up, some more projects that are going to be expanding down to Pueblo. How do you feel about the induced meandering of the waterways?
I think that's a great idea. In fact, that's what's happened in many of the projects that the Fountain Creek Watershed District has done, is that they've created those natural meanderings that it should be. Because if you think about all of our waterways, they were never meant to hold the volume of water that they hold now.
No,
we import 65, 70 million gallons of water a day, and it all goes down in our drains into Fountain Creek for the most part. We have hard soil, or we've created, these landscapes that are Kentucky bluegrass, where we just lay carpets on, of more impervious surface. Even the grass is impervious. And so if we can think about how we're doing that, you're absolutely right. Meandering is critical.
And it creates an edge too. It slows down the water and it allows it to sink more. Because if we just keep pushing these large quantities out, we're going to lose our water to the ocean.
Yeah,
and we don't want that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and it's just the Colorado River, which we were lucky to be, senior water rights holders in the upper basin. But if you take the geography that the Colorado River serves, it would be the 5th largest economy in the world. It's the majority of our produce is grown with it. It's really what Phoenix and Las Vegas survive on. But it's not something to take lightly. It's the one over-appropriated river that really is a huge impact to all Americans.
And we're the headwaters here.
Yeah.
So I think your cleanup project is fabulous to extend it, to the whole area.
And to not waste it.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
The impermeable surfaces, that's huge that you said that. And I think that's something that we can incorporate into HOAs, having them educate their community members. Instead of paving your driveway, you can get these like little, pavers that they're open, they're like holes where they,
the pervious pavement. There's low impact development where you can catch water off your roof. And
yes, we can now, and a lot of people don't realize that. Yeah, we can collect rainwater, and I utilize a lot of that in my own yard to try not to turn my water hose on or. No more sprinklers. I don't use my sprinklers. In fact, I mulched my whole front yard, and I'm starting to create a food forest. And all my neighbors are very curious.
Yeah, they're wondering, well, good, I'm going to hang out with you in August and September when the harvest comes.
That's right.
I love fresh vegetables.
All the worms are squirming.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
But yeah, we have a great natural environment. We have a lot of wildlife. We have the ability, because I guess they call us an ecotone. We're the
edge,
the high plane, the edge of the system. You know more about that than I do.
Well, ecotone, edge, permaculture is edge, meaning that could be the most productive as far as wildlife goes. And I think something that I learned when I moved here is, and I'm finding it because they're coming back, is we kind of push the wildlife out of a lot of our regions, and they're coming back, and
Yeah.
which is nice.
No, it's great, and we all love them. Council was approached at one point when I was there, and that we should kill deer, we should cull deer, we should let people with bow and arrow go out to parks, and boy, the people that were upset in this community, you don't you ever do that to my deer, And I know they eat plants, and they can be destructive, and they cause car accidents. But we love that culture here. We love our wildlife.
That'll be a future podcast. Stay tuned. Yeah, we need to work with nature, not against it. And there's solutions for everything out there.
Yeah,
great.
and we can make this the greenest, most healthy, best place to recreate city in the country, and maybe region.
I think that's what we want.
That's right.
Yeah. And if you're listening today, again, it's Richard's Rubbish
Roundup.
Thank you.
Go to Poor Richards, or go to poorrichardsdowntown.com. It's on our website.
Great.
And you can sign up and help us. And if you want us to come out to your neighborhood or your part of town and tell you how we do it. And by the way, we can get dumpsters. We can get pickers, we can get gloves, we can get everything for you. The city's going to provide that. And so wherever you are, this is something you can just do, and you don't have to worry about all the extras that are involved.
It's our responsibility to care for our waterways.
It really is.
I agree. And that is even, if you don't want to go out and pick, you can also just have these efforts in your own home. Think about the things that are going down your drain.
Yeah.
Things like that as well.
Rain gardens, rain barrels, what you plant, where you plant it. We all need to take responsibility, don't we?
That's right. And if Colorado Springs city is listening, we can adopt that gray water system as is. Colorado's already passed it. I think there's a lot of complication with that right now, but I'm really looking forward to doing the laundry to landscape.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way to, again, get the water out to the landscape, not down.
Yeah.
And rush through our rivers.
Yeah, and it's a tough one because every drop of water is owned downstream, and everybody is fighting for, they say whiskey is for drinking and water's for fighting, and it's really true. So but I wish the state would be more prescriptive in letting people keep water that comes off of their property as opposed to having let it go downstream. But, it's just the nature of water wars.
That's right. And I don't know too much about that. All right.
You probably don't want to.
You might be right about that.
That's right.
But here I am today with you talking about water.
Yeah.
Well, Richard, I think I had just one last question for you before we stop, and I think you kind of answered it. But if you could just give the listeners one last reason why this restoration project is going to be the most important thing in our area.
Well, I wish there was one, but climate change, heat, health, recreation, animals, wildlife. There's a lot of possibilities. So I wish I had one. It's my curse being a former politician, is you can't shut me up sometimes, but many. And making this the best place in the country and in the world to live.
That's right, building our community healthy. And gosh, we could get so many volunteers. I can't wait to see what next year is going to bring for you, Richard.
That's right. Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity. This was really, really fun. I haven't done this for a while.
I'm happy to have you in as an elf today, too.
That's right. That's right. Good. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And lastly, I would like to acknowledge that we are on unceded territory and the ancestral homeland of the Ute people, who have stewarded this land throughout previous generations, gathering at the base of Tava, which means Sun Mountain, and what we now call in our society Pikes Peak, America's Mountain. We also acknowledge that these lands were occupied by the Arapaho and the Cheyenne. It is important to recognize and respect the enduring relationships that exist between Indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. And I encourage you all to engage with these communities.
you.